City of Solvang Planning Commission, Monday, June 4th, 2018. Call this meeting to order. If we could all stand and rise, and Aaron will lead us to the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Put your hand over your heart and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we start tonight, just a couple of suggestions. We're going to keep public speaking to 3 minutes, please. If you go over the 3 minutes, a second or two, that's great. If I stop you, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just saying this is 3 minutes, we've got to stop. So try and wrap it up in 3 minutes. This is a public forum with different views, different opinions, be it whatever we're speaking about. So if we could refrain from any hissing or applauding or booing, I think it intimidates people that might have a differing opinion that not want to get up and speak. So if we could just refrain from the clapping after each speaker or the hissing or the booing when people are speaking, that would be great. And we can have a real smooth meeting. At this time, if there's any member, we only have one item on the agenda, which is the mercantile. If there are any members of the audience that would like to speak on issues that are not on the agenda for this evening, you're welcome to come up and address the commission at this time.
Mr. Chair.
Please.
Clarification. What you're speaking about this evening on agenda item number 2 is the mercantile amendment, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if you wanted to speak about the mercantile, but not the amendment, is that going to be accepted testimony during this point on
Roy?
the agenda?
If it's not about the amendment, I would recommend it be allowed during the public comment period.
Of course, public comments,
Yeah.
yes. Okay. Thank you.
Then I would like to speak at that point.
Okay. Thank you. Would you fill out a form? Okay, thank you. Do I have all the forms that are over on the table? Any requests for continuances, withdrawals, postponements? What's that, Jack? Oh. Reordering of agenda items or additions of ex-agenda items at this time? No? Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting on Monday, May 7th?
I have a couple of
Okay.
corrections, please.
Go ahead, Gay.
Okay, the first item, correction, sorry, Brenda, I didn't get to you sooner, but discussion item number 3, second paragraph, first sentence. It states a question that I supposedly asked, but my question was, what is the process for determining who is responsible for paying the in lieu parking fees? What I was trying to find out was, is the owner or the tenant, and if it's the tenant, how does that come about? Okay, and then the second was just a tiny little thing, but on the last page, first paragraph, third line, where it says property, that word should be parking, should be on-site parking. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, with those two changes, would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes from May 7th?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The meeting minutes from Monday, May 7th are approved. At this point, we will start the meeting on the agenda, and,
Public comment
oh yes, on the previous.
on anything not on the agenda.
We discussed that already.
And he wanted to speak.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, thank you, my apologies.
Roy concluded
Come on up.
he needed
I thought it was meeting mixed in.
no.
If you can state your name, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, my name is Lansing Duncan, and I live in Mission Oaks, adjacent to the Mercantile Project. And I've spoken to you, the BAR, and the City Council on this subject, primarily because I've been very concerned about how it's impacted our neighborhood, and that there have been a number of parts of the project that haven't been incorporated in the analysis and review, and they've appeared as they went along. Perhaps the most visible part of that, well, if not visible, let's say the controversial part of that was the request to remove 5 trees along Old Mission Drive, which were originally to be saved. And So that came before yourselves, that amendment, and then it was appealed to the City Council. Then also, of course, we've had things like the placement of the building on the opposite end of the project, the one that's at the corner of Alamo Pintado and Old Mission, much closer to the road than was approved and shown on the plans and then shown in the visuals. And then there were ramps and other hardscape elements that hadn't been shown on the original drawings that appeared there too. All of these were visual impacts that impacted our neighborhood. Then also, one thing to the city's credit was that you asked for a construction management plan which outlined, since this is a project that's going on for quite a while with a number of phases, what would happen in the different phases. And we were very pleased that you had that, but I've noticed, for instance, that it hasn't always been followed. For instance, where our road narrows and becomes very substandard, Old Mission Drive, before it enters the New Frontiers entrance, there's a retaining wall and the road drops dramatically in width. There's only a sidewalk along the side of the shopping center, not on the opposite side. For about a month there was a 30-foot long truck with a boom on it like a crane. And that was in this whole area, which is pointed out as no construction parking along Old Mission Drive. And at the same time, the sidewalk was torn up and closed. So that meant people had to walk out into the street. That was a little problematic since there weren't 2 lanes of traffic even in the street. And this became even more problematic when our neighborhood was evacuated due to a gas leak. So I'm just pointing out that there are a number of issues with this project that have impacted the community, and we're concerned in the long run because of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ransom. Okay, at this time, if anybody else would like to speak on items that are not on the agenda or this specific agenda, then we'll go to our staff report or the item that is on the agenda. Any else have conflicts? Residencies, purchase of properties, financial involvement, or just Aaron? So Aaron is recused. Now we're set. Go to staff report, please.
Good evening. I'm Holly Owen. I'm the planning director for the city of Solvang. We're here tonight to consider a request from Joshua Richmond, the owner, for an approval and amendment to an approved development plan. The development plan was originally approved in April of 2016. This is for a 2,553 square foot addition to an existing 6,994 square foot commercial building, also known as Building A. This is part of a project that was originally covered under what they called the Caltrans alternative. There were several scenarios when this development project was approved. One of them assumed that Caltrans would approve an entrance and exit off of 246, and one of them assumed they would not. At that time, this building, Building A, was to be demolished should the Caltrans alternative be approved. Caltrans denied that, and at that point, the building was considered to be part of the original Phase 2, which involved remodeling the building and not demolishing it, as was planned in that alternative. The applicant seeks approval of this amendment to the development plan to accommodate administrative offices for the United States Forest Service, the Los Padres National Forest in particular. This will also require, and the applicant requests a lot line adjustment to place the building on its own legal parcel. This was at the request of the Forest Service as part of their usage. Will contain 32 parking spaces dedicated to Building A use. The Building A use is for office use only. There are representatives here tonight from the Forest Service to elaborate on the uses that are proposed for this building. There will, in addition, be 17 parking places in a secured upper parking area off of Old Mission Drive. That is also per the Forest Service requirement as part of a government agency. Existing utilities will remain in place. There will be some site preparation and grading, a rather minor amount, estimated 200 cubic yards of export material. Immediate past uses of this building, you probably all remember. It's been a thrift store. It's been a yoga studio. It's been some administrative offices, so office use is not unknown to this building. There has also been apparently a restaurant, which must have predated me, and a real estate office. So it's gone through various iterations. This is the first time, I believe, perhaps in the building history, that it will be all under one use for that particular building. The environmental review, there have been there's no substantive changes proposed to the project, and under the CEQA guidelines, no environmental review is necessary due to the fact that there was an original MND that was done on the part of the project. We touched a little bit in our discussions with the applicant on landscaping at this point. There are 3 trees that are scheduled to be removed. One of them is particularly constrained and right up against the building. This will be part of a larger landscaping plan that will be reviewed as part of the 246 frontage. We have some changes that are occurring and proposed along that frontage, and discussions are underway internally with staff to ensure that we receive what we want in terms of a landscape plan. There was a Board of Architectural Review approval of the project, and that was fairly recent this year. And that concludes my staff report at this time. I know that there are some presenters here from the applicant side that would wish to share some insights. You do have your conditions of approval with some of the changes that are required that would cover this project. It is shown in your packet. There's a change for C6 that talks about the landscape plan and screening, and then a change also including the lot line adjustment that is described on phase 2. The 3rd page in for your conditions of approval. So at this time, this concludes my staff report. I think there would be some time now for the applicant to speak to the project.
State your name.
Yeah, my name is Paul Poirier. I'm the architect for the project. We're really happy to be able to bring this project to the community. The Forest Service and sort of an office use on this end of the shopping center seems like a nice way to buffer some of the commercial uses and noise that would normally come from retail or restaurant use to that end of the shopping center. The Forest Service is kind of a premium tenant for us. They're a branch of the federal government, and they have a lot of requirements regarding security and terrorism and things like that that were incorporated into the design, so that people couldn't ram a explosive van into the front of the building, for example, or maybe lie in wait in the parking lot for key personnel who have to park in a secured parking lot. That's why we have that, because it's required for a government facility of this type. We are expanding the building by 2,500 square feet. The previous entitlements excluded this building from the development plan because they didn't know what they were going to be doing with it. And when we had the opportunity to get this ideal client to come to Solvang and relocate their facility from Goleta out here, because it makes great operational sense for them to be able to give information to people who may be coming out to the San Ynez to go camping or find a nice trail, or, you know, where's a neat place to go, they can come get the information from the Forest Service, as well as be a spot to have botanists and other people that are studying that area be in the vicinity of the area that they're working on. So we see this as a big opportunity for the community to have those folks in town, have them having lunch here. That sort of thing is great. I had a couple of questions from the We Watch that I wanted to address. So we're adding about 1,200 square feet per floor to the existing building. We're reusing the existing building and not making it any taller than it currently is. We're kind of using that envelope, but maybe resurfacing it to make it look a little more contemporary along the lines of what the Forest Service wants, which is kind of a park-looking building. So we're going to be using the same palette of materials that they're using in the rest of the Mercantile Center, but adding a lot of natural stone, cladding, and things like that to the front of the building that you see in the elevations that make it in alignment with the other kind of Forest Service projects around town that they're very proud of, not around town, but around the state. We are removing 3 trees because we think that when we put in these foundations for the front entry, it's going to disrupt the roots of those trees. So we'd rather take them out and replace them with other trees. So we have numerous trees that are being added on the landscape plan, if you look at those. We're being super efficient with the FIT program, which is General Services Administration program, to utilize less space for people. So the inside of the building is going to have these cubicles where people sit, as opposed to having large 10 by 10 offices for all of the personnel. And then they have smaller breakout rooms and other collaboration areas built into the space. So it's sort of the modern take from the General Services Administration on how to make the building most efficient in terms of number of people per square foot that can work out of a place. And I'm glad to say that we were able to come up with a layout that will really work well with the Forest Service. We're right at the cusp of having that get the final approval by all the parties that be regarding the interior layout, and be able to start taking off to start the construction drawings fairly shortly. There are 17 spaces in the enclosed lot. That was a question that came from the We Watch. And Josh told me that the overall project is overparked by roughly 45 to 50 spaces. So even if you took those 17 spaces out of circulation, although they'll be used by employees who park to go into the facility, there would still be adequate parking for the whole facility, including all of the housing and retail and all of that. That's about it. Most of the additions, we're adding about 400 square feet per level under the covered porches. So that would leave about 800 square feet per floor that's not under the existing porches of the existing building. That was another question that came from the Women's Environmental Watch. If you have any other questions, I'm here able to answer them, and I'd like to maybe turn it over to Josh Richmond to say a little bit, or Kevin.
Can I ask you to maybe use?
Yeah. So Kevin's with the Forest Service, and he is the supervisor of the forest from Goleta.
And one quick question, Paul. During the course of our discussion, can we call upon you to answer
yeah.
some questions that we might have? Thank you.
Sure.
State your name, please.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Elliott, and I'm the forest supervisor for Los Padres National Forest. I started this post the end of January. Been with the Forest Service for 38 years, and I've been a forest supervisor for half of that time. Actually sought this post out. I've spent most of my career in the Northern Rockies, Washington, D.C., and then other places in the East. So I have an opportunity to come here, whole new environment for us. And so my wife and I are really pleased to be here. And then more especially, I'm also really thankful and pleased to then move our forest headquarters, which is what this office is. This office that we're moving here is actually the forest headquarters for the entire Los Padres National Forest. It's almost nearly 2 million acres, and it's principally administrative. It's myself, my deputy, and then a variety of administrative staff, civil rights budget, personnel, and a number of resource specialists. And up to a maximum of 50 folks would be in this office, although realistically I would guess that probably on any one day, if half of those folks were in the office, then they're not doing what I'm expecting them to do, because most of those folks I'm going to expect to be outside. But again, principally, it is indeed the forest headquarters for the entire Los Padres National Forest. And every place that we have an office in, we're part of the community. We're going to buy our fuel here. Some of our kids are going to go to the same schools that your kids go to. We're going to pay taxes the same as you all are paying taxes. We're going to embed ourselves and be part of this community, and we're excited to do that.
Thanks. Kevin, does this affect the Santa Maria location?
So no, so not historically, but there was a plan that the forest headquarters would move to Santa Maria and be where the Santa Lucia Ranger District, which is at Santa Maria, that office would contain both the forest headquarters and the Santa Lucia Ranger District. We've now changed that plan to have the forest headquarters here.
Okay.
Long term, it is possible we may be consolidating. This forest has 5 districts. We're going through a reorganization process, and so we may actually be consolidating down to 3 ranger districts.
Oh, thank you.
Certainly.
And one more speaker on the developer's behalf. Hello again.
Hello, Josh Richmond with the developer. I'll just say a couple comments about this proposed use. We were approached by the Forest Service maybe a year and a half ago, and we've started a long road with them to discuss the feasibility of our site as a potential headquarters for the forest. And it's been a long road. It's been a road that has been very detail-oriented in terms of their needs. We've discussed everything from their parking requirements to their staff requirements to the requirement that there be an American flag flown in front of their building. If you've had an opportunity to review the plans that we've submitted so far, I think you'll find they're rather detailed in terms of the look of the building. It hasn't changed, I don't think, at all since our initial BAR review several months ago. So I anticipate that the community of Solvang will greatly benefit from this user. It's a user that's going to bring high educated people to the community. These people will likely move to Solvang or near Solvang. They will shop here. They will, like the supervisor said, their children will go to school here, and they will be active members of the community. And I would like to clarify, too, this is not supposed to be a fire station. There's not going to be fire trucks in the traditional sense housed here to respond to emergency calls and things like this. It's strictly an administrative office, and that's the way it's being designed. Thank you.
That's it for that. At this point, we'll open it up to public comment. And our first speaker, Susan Bott. Thanks, Susan. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. After many years of fighting unrestrained development, both here in the San Ynez Valley and in Goleta, I've come to a conclusion. It's an uphill battle and the odds are against me. There's a pattern I've noticed with new developments. They are approved and commenced, and then the change orders start. Some of these proposed changes are small and insignificant, a shrub here, a light fixture there, but some are major, and this is one of them. Enlarging an already large building by 36.5% is huge and should not be approved. I won't go into all of the parking issues, and they are significant, or environmental issues, loss of more trees, which are important to me, but might not mean anything to the developer. The real issue I want this planning commission to think about is precedent. What does this mean to the next development coming down the pike? It means that the rules don't matter. It means go ahead and get your approval any way you can. You can always change things later. I once had a developer's lawyer say to me something to the effect that, "You mean you're going to all this trouble just to make my client abide by these silly rules?" When I said yes, I was going to all that trouble, he was amazed. Silly me. So I ask you to please make your rules and the process mean something. Don't let a developer play by his own rules and make changes whenever he likes. The project was approved. Please let it stand. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you, Susan.
Gabe? State your full name, please.
Thank you. My name is Gabe Rossetti, resident of Old Mission Drive. I've been here before, spoke about the trees and the bushes and everything leaving. We consider this a piecemeal project. I have helped develop commercial projects, residential projects in the past, and when plans are submitted, they're submitted, and you make very few external changes. There can be internal changes. When you expand square footage of a building, not only are you losing existing parking spots, it's pretty obvious, but you then have a need for additional spots. The business model that we're looking at here, and I don't know how many offices and cubicles are planned?
So up to 50?
Up to 50. And will there be government vehicles parked on site overnight?
Approximately 10
Okay.
government vehicles would be in that 17, that where he was talking about the secured spot. There would
Okay.
be approximately 10 government
Perfect.
vehicles in that area.
Perfect. So that's a need.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. That's a need for 60 spots. And Josh claims we're 45 spots. He's got an additional 45 spots. Because an employee doesn't come in, logistically, they don't come in and drive a vehicle out. They're going to go into their office, they're going to do something. That's a need for 2 spots. And if, so the parking should be according to the maximum office occupants, because unlike a grocery store, a bank, a restaurant, a CVS, those government employees can occupy those spots for 8+ hours. When you have these other people coming for parking, they're more transient. They come and pick up a prescription and leave. So the formula for the parking spots is flawed, because you have a need for a maximum of, what I'm hearing, 60 parking spots. Parking on our street and traffic flow on Old Mission is already a problem. And that will get only worse with more trucks from New Frontiers, CVS, government trucks. They'll pull out across from the entrance to Mission Oaks and will wreak havoc on our street that is already jammed with employee parking, and only 2 businesses right now are open. We have New Frontiers employees that park on Old Mission Drive, right to the old Verizon building. And then we have, and her plate says, #1 banker. She's obviously a Union Bank employee or a manager, and she parks on Old Mission Drive, near Alamo Pintado. She doesn't park within the confines of the project. So they're not doing what they're supposed to do. This is a residential area, a recreational area. People bicycle, walk. There's families coming up and down the street constantly. And we're just going to be deluged now with more cars, more trucks, and in addition, I think you said there will be visitors coming? People can come to this facility?
Correct.
Right. So now that's not just the occupants, that's people from outside. If this project has sufficient parking, which I strongly believe it does not, and you approve this piecemeal expansion, then it can only be allowed with one condition, and that condition is there is no parking, red curbed, on Old Mission Drive, from Alamo Pintado to beyond where the old Verizon building is. Excuse me. And then when the Mercantile is overcrowded, then its customers, its employees, its full-time apartment residents will have to drive around the confines of the project until they find a place to park, just like so many other commercial developments that don't have the luxury or convenience of a neighborhood off-site parking. They can park within the confines of that facility. So please protect our neighborhood, ensure our health, safety, and welfare, and deny this.
Thank you, Gabe. Next speaker is Nancy Emerson, please.
Nancy Emerson, We Watch.
I'll reset that.
We Watch, an organization formed in 1992 to protect the valley's environment and quality of life, has some questions about the proposed expansion of the Mercantile. We recognize that bringing the Forest Service offices to Solvang will diversify its economy within its existing borders, a good thing. We are concerned because the protection of mature trees has been a formidable issue, and parking for customers, employees, and apartment residents of the projected businesses did seem marginal when it was approved. Here are our questions, and I did give these briefly to the developer before, and some of them have been answered, so I won't ask them again.
Okay.
But I'm just asking that if I were in your shoes, these are the questions that I would like to be sure were answered before I approved the changes. Why does the Forest Service now think it needs 2,500 more square feet than originally planned? And have all alternatives for creatively using the existing space, including the porch areas, been exhausted? 2, parking. Does asking for the additional square footage mean there will be more employees than originally projected? And I'm still not sure if 50 was the original projection. The question then is, where are they going to park? How many forest vehicles? That question was answered. It leaves 7 spaces in the parking lot that's enclosed for employee cars. How many visitors per day are projected for this building? Has that figure changed? And will there be enough parking for all those vehicles? And originally it seemed that it was going to be more a research facility, and it's interesting that now tourists will be coming there for information. So that's kind of a new idea for us. Outdoor lighting, this question is just a double check to be sure that the parking lot lights are not so tall that it causes light pollution for the neighbors. And that information was not included in the changes because it was in the original. So I don't know what the answer is to that. And then trees, we agree with the staff that the mature sycamore needs to go. It's too close to the existing building. And I wondered why the 2 adjoining trees, did both of them need to go? They're evergreen oaks. And then how large will the replacement trees be? What will they be? Where will they be placed? And how long will it be before they're adequately screened? And then might it be possible to save the sycamore and the triangular planter that was originally scheduled to go, because there have been changes to that planter? Thank you very much.
Good questions, Nancy. Thank you. Next speaker is Carrie Rossetti. State your name, please.
Hello, Carrie Rossetti. I live on Old Mission Drive, kitty corner to where this amended building is going in.
Want
And
to stop so we can get the phone?
what was that?
We're going to wait. We can get the phone. Yeah, you're starting over. You're fine. Right from now. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. It's going to be really difficult for me to not get emotional, because every time I've kind of had to be here is because they're making a change and they're doing something to the detriment of the neighborhood and the people that live and utilize our street. We have moms, strollers, kids on bicycles. We have elderly that walk their dogs up and down our street. It's access for people that live in apartments in Solvang that don't have vehicles, to get to the grocery store, to get to the pharmacy. We love it. It's neighborhoody, it's tranquil. There's 8 homes slated to go in on our street before the dead end. So it's going to be even more of a neighborhood, which is wonderful. People, kids, families, we love it. However, hearing of a security terrorism facility where there needs to be lighting and security, and this is a federal target for something that could happen, horrific in a neighborhood that I never even imagined that's what's on tap right here. I walked the street yesterday, and there's a family whose driveway literally goes right into where this secured parking is. I took a video of it, and I was just astonished that, are we considering where this is taking place? And parking, to have that street obstructed by vehicles when we have kids, bikes, strollers, elderly people, up and down the street to do their shopping, to get from point A to point B. Not everybody has the luxury of owning a vehicle. It's really important to make this a sustainable, family-friendly, cohesive project that goes with a neighborhood. It's literally sharing a roadway with a neighborhood. And I have read that in a staff report, the project will not be a detriment to the health, the safety, the comfort, the convenience, the general welfare of the neighborhood. It will not be incompatible with the surrounding area. The development will not materially or adversely aggravate the parking and traffic conditions. What? It's right there. There's no way that can be met. There's absolutely no way. So you have to turn this down. You have to stand with the original plan and say, no, it's a major change to a plan that it can't be changed.
Thank you.
Not at our expense.
Thanks, Carrie. Lawrence Duncan? I'm sorry, I can't read. My apologies. I mean, I can read sort of, but I couldn't read this word. Lansing, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I'll say right up front that I'm going to need more than 3 minutes to express my concerns about this project. And considering that there's only one item on the agenda.
Tell you what, I'll give you 4 minutes
Okay.
if you don't lecture me, because we're all public servants and we're all citizens. If you don't lecture us on what a good planning commissioner should do, because you've done it in the past, you've informed us that you were a planning commissioner and this is how we should behave. We're all just people trying to help out here. So we'll give you 4 minutes if you don't do that.
That's going to be tough.
4 minutes.
I'll tell you
Talk
why.
fast.
I'll tell you why. I could not possibly consider this project without looking at a plan at it. And I can't see that you guys have looked at a plan at all. And certainly there's nothing, oh great. Did the public have anything? I had to ask to go into the city to see a plan on this. And only then did I find out that yes, there are 11 offices and 39 cubicles. There are 50 employees that are going to be in this building. It's as though it was preordained that this would be shoehorned into this shopping center. This is expanded use. Now, I have nothing against the Forest Service. Forest Service, I think, is a great addition to our community. But you can't infinitely expand both the square footage and the parking requirements and the intensity of use in this neighborhood shopping center, which has constrained access already. And if I were you, another thing I would ask, I'm sorry I'm lecturing you again, is what is the actual parking status of the shopping center? The idea that somebody would stand up here and tell you, oh, I've been told there are 40 or 50 spaces overparked, and then not have the facts on that would be outrageous. When I looked at the sheets that were provided, it showed me that, in fact, they need all that parking that they have. And it wasn't clear to me that when 184 spaces are listed, I'm talking about the total shopping center, that includes spaces that are now going to be removed. Because as has been pointed out, you're removing spaces as you add a building, which then in turn needs new spaces. The other thing I was just amazed at is that there was no discussion about Forest Service vehicles. If you have Forest Service, you have Forest Service vehicles. You have to have pickle trucks. I've never seen the Forest Service without pickle trucks. And then that also means that you're going to have a lot of people coming and going. That's okay too, but you have to have adequate parking for that. So now you've found out that in fact there's only 7 spaces in that upper area, and then maybe there's 15 down below, and that's 22. Your requirements say that you would have to have 32 for this building just there. Now there's been some discussion about the fact that, oh, you've got the rest of the shopping center. Well, that's moot. That means nothing if you do not have a parking agreement from the shopping center that you can go use those spaces, that the public can do that and the Forest Service can do that. What this brings you to is the totality of the picture, and the totality of the picture is you should think seriously about whether this additional use can fit in here unless there's give somewhere else in this shopping center. I mean, if you really want this tenant, then maybe you should reconsider the square footage you have in the total shopping center and the uses you have, which also impact the parking issue. So what I'm really encouraging you to do is, in fact, I would ask for a continuance and ask for more information and come back and get what you really need to do in order to make the findings that one of the neighbors pointed out. As it now stands, of the 7 findings you're being asked to make, 3 of them you clearly can't make if there's overflow parking that goes into the neighborhood. That the site for the project is adequate in size, shape, location, and physical characteristics to accommodate the type of use and level of development proposed. That the project will not be detrimental to the health, safety, comfort, convenience, and general welfare of the neighborhood and will not be incompatible with the surrounding area. And that the development will not materially or adversely aggravate the parking and traffic conditions in the area. Now, I would like to have the Forest Service as a neighbor. I think that's fine, but you cannot infinitely put more stuff into this area with such poor access and close proximity to the neighborhood. So I would encourage you to continue this project, gather the necessary information to be sure of the decision you're making. Thank you.
Extremely good points. Thank you. Next, and the final speaker that I have, Lansing? Okay, we're done with the public speaking. Thanks. State your name, please.
Hi, my name is Margie Hunt, and I'm a homeowner on the cul-de-sac adjacent to the project, which is Honey Locust Court. And I consider myself a key tenant of the area, just like the Forest Service, as you refer to. This is our home for our family of 4 with 2 young children. And we are huge consumers of the area. We enjoy living in our quiet neighborhood and would not like to have that compromised by extra parking, people parking in our front yard, basically. And also my husband and I, just like you say, the Forest Service personnel we're well educated. We're UCSB alumni, and we enjoy living where we live, and the loss of trees and the quality of life will really put a damper on the property value of where we live, and you can't put a price tag on that. And I just want to consider the kids and the families that live there, that are playing basketball in the cul-de-sac, and sometimes the ball goes down the street, and it worries me that they might get hit. I mean, this is just a reality of my daily life. And I just want you to consider that. And this is our little neighborhood, and this is not a big industrial area. Thank you.
Thank you, Marjorie. I'm assuming the architect and the developer have been making some notes, and if they would like to come up and address some of the points. Obviously, I think the key concern for us is the parking.
Less than 10.
So the first response would be they're getting less than 10 visitors per day to the existing office. So I don't know how it'll be out here, if it'll be more people or less people, but I don't think that that's a major function of the building, but it is a function of the building to be able to disperse information to the public through the front lobby of the Forest Service office. One thing that I think that the Planning Commission should take into consideration is that the existing overall development has 52 extra spaces as shown on sheet A 0.1 of our set. So we calculated the actual tenants that are in the center now, not just hypotheticals that were done when the original development was done. So we have Los Arroyos and the other tenants that are over there in that parking calculation to find out what the actuals are. So there's 52 extra spaces. And I believe Josh is going to have a reciprocal parking and drainage easement from one parcel to the other. Isn't that right, Josh? Yep. So that is going to be shared parking. We have 14 bicycle spaces. The existing 6,000 square foot building, say we didn't do anything to it, we just tried to find the highest and best use for that building under the existing zoning, would probably have a much greater environmental impact on the neighborhood than the proposed Forest Service building being 50% unoccupied by people out in the field. We could have a 6,000 square foot building that could potentially have, if you have 100 square feet per person, 60 employees in there if it's office, or we could have a bank that would have a very high peak hour trip generation at noon and at 5 o'clock that would cause more mayhem for the shopping center in the neighborhood than having an office building that's relatively quiet with 50% occupied and most of the people out working in the forest. The outdoor lighting isn't really changed from the initial submittal because we're not really changing the configuration of that upper parking lot. So I'm not sure what light fixtures were part of that original approval, but they're the same ones that are still going to be there. And that could easily, if you just want to make it a condition, have 0 foot candle cutoff at the property line. We do that all the time so that no light is spilling out into the street or the neighborhood. We do have a fence with something growing on it back along that street frontage, so it'll be very easy to control the light within that kind of upper fenced parking lot. Let me see, I think I missed a couple of questions from the WeWatch people. Talked about the outdoor lighting. Really, the 3 trees are being removed, and there's a number of trees that are on the landscape plan. We're putting in, I think, more than double that amount in different parts of that. So it should look better than it does now, and it'll frame the building nicely. I guess that's all I had to comment on.
Okay, thank you. State your name.
My name is Clint Pierce from San Luis Obispo. I'm representing the project developer. I just had a couple points I was hoping to make that might kind of help provide some context also. As Holly mentioned early in her intro and presentation, there were two scenarios that were originally presented and approved because we weren't, at that time, we didn't know if Caltrans was going to grant us approval on the 246. One of the approved scenarios included a large retail building where the 246 inlet came in. That was, at that time, anticipated to be a brew pub type restaurant of between 6,000 and 7,000 square feet. I wanted to bring that up because, again, that was part of the original approval. That type of operation typically has, at any given time, between 20 and 30 employees on site at any time, and maybe 30 to 40 or 50 total employees. In addition, restaurants are high parking users. In fact, they're the highest parking user in a shopping center typically. Usually it's between 5 and 10 spaces per 1,000 square feet. So if we would have gone with that originally approved scenario, we're looking at 60 to 70, maybe 80 spaces of demand for that scenario. So I just wanted to bring that up because that was part of the original approval and anticipation of this project. And then the other item just wanted to bring up is that this was always considered a phased project because New Frontiers wanted to stay open throughout the whole building of their building and then just move over. And the only way to make that happen was to have a multi-phase project. So we feel like we've tried really hard to stay with the original intent and approvals of the project.
And we knew that going in. Thank you. At this time, we will close this meeting to public discussion and turn it over to the commissioners' questions and discussions. Would you like to start, Gay?
Sure. My first question was, could you just clarify the reason for the proposed lot line adjustment?
That's a request from the Forest Service to have their long-term lease on its own dedicated parcel. That's my understanding. If there's any more information that you can give, I'd appreciate it. There is already there are already 2 parcels on the project. There's another lot line that's towards the first bank end of the project, and that will be moved over. Oh. So it will not be 3 parcels. There will still be 2 parcels, just as there are now.
If I can just address that quickly. So,
thanks, Josh.
There, as Holly mentioned, there are currently 2 lots there, and the lot line currently bisects the easternmost drive aisle. We're just asking to move that property line to the westernmost drive aisle to put this user on its own parcel. The reason is because the federal government likes to pay its own bills, have its own property tax bills, insurance requirements, electricity, gas, etc. It's easier to have them on an isolated parcel rather than sharing those costs with commercial tenants. Thanks.
Thank you. What were the original parking requirements for the project as it was approved? Was it the 184 or was it a different
in the conditions of approval in your packet, it outlines what was existing and then what was proposed in the 2 different scenarios. The one that was the Caltrans alternative had less parking, and the one that we now have had 186 spaces in the original conditions of approval. Okay. I think at this point our count is 184. And one thing to keep in mind, I think, is when staff assesses parking needs, we have a zoning ordinance that gives us a ratio of 1 to 300 square feet for retail, for instance. And this was a retail use historically, among other uses. Office has a more intense use. It's actually I have that wrong. I'm sorry. It's 1 to 500 for restaurant, 1 to 300 for the office use. So there already is built into that parking calculation an understanding that people will be there all day, and so that is how we determined the parking need for this particular use, right. And then how that arrived.
Okay, I understand all that. We basically lost 2 parking spaces with this addition to Building A, and even if the Forest Service needed 60 spaces, that would be 28 more that are currently provided for in their number of 32, and there's still 50.
That's assuming that they need 60 spaces.
I know,
and that
that's not the case.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to reassure the public
exactly
that it is not going to be a real crunch. There's
right.
still 52 spaces available, and even if everybody was there, all 60 people, they would only need 28 of those. So I don't have an issue with the parking. I just wanted to clarify that. This is a little, the grading plan. What Can you tell me what the finished grade elevations are going to be? Are they actually lower than the current elevation?
Paul can answer that better than I can, I think, at this point, without plans in front of me.
Yeah, the existing finished floor of the lower level is actually the finished floor of the finished building. So we're just carrying that same floor level out in front of the building a little bit into where the loading zone, where the trucks offloaded to the thrift shop would be.
Yeah, people helping people. Thank
So
you.
we're not really digging that into a deeper hole of any kind because we're using the existing building.
And so we're not gonna, it really is not gonna be any higher because we're not raising the elevation and then doing 35 feet on top
Exactly.
of that. Perfect. Okay, thank you. And this is a little nit, but on page, what page was it? A 0.1, it talks about the service providers. And it says the electrical service is provided by Southern California Edison and cable is provided by Cox Communications. Is that true? Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I believe not Cox that I know of.
No,
That was,
I would
that
be
was, that was an error.
Comcast and PG&E, right?
That, I don't know whether it's PG&E
Yeah, well,
there.
that's there,
at
I
that-
only
at
live
that-
about a mile away, and those are my providers. Okay, we probably need to correct that on the plans.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and, oh, maybe, I'm sorry, it was page C 1.0 is where that occurred. Okay, I think that was all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
If we striped the lot like they do at the high school, we could put 300 cars in there, but no one would ever get out. I mean, obviously, from what everybody said tonight, parking is the issue. Everything's quality of life. We have to look at what's best for the town as a whole. I'm really excited about a tenant like the Forest Service versus a restaurant or a pizza place that'll be open for a while, et cetera. I think that's that's awesome for this town to have a tenant like that. But obviously, everybody in this room has some serious issues about the parking. And I would hope that have these been addressed. What else can we do to help all of us to know that it's not going to be a zoo over there? Suggestions? I mean, I don't think people here tonight are getting the answers that they want. You know, that is something to think about.
Also, sidewalks would be nice.
Well, the sidewalk's going in down below eventually, right? That's the strangest
Sidewalk.
bus stop
I
in
know,
any
Michigan.
town, is our bus stop right there in front of.
There is a current bus stop now. that
Yes,
we-
please.
Since I'm the boss, if you tell me, and so I just got confirmation, there's enough parking spots within the facility, if you will. Therefore, I'm pretty sure that I can tell my folks, I can direct my folks not to park on the street.
I'm sure that would be a welcome. That would be welcome.
This is not my first rodeo, obviously, but.
Well, this is what it's all about,
That's-
folks,
That's
is,
what we need to help mitigate those concerns. That's easy.
okay.
No
And I think-
on-street parking then to be added to the conditions of approval by
fine
employees
with
of the
that.
Forest Service or any other vehicles.
Whenever we have issues like this and Aaron's been recused, I always want to make suggestions that people could park at Aaron's house because he lives right across the street. And he really doesn't have much of a say about it. But the parking is an issue. I think that the no parking on Old Mission would be pretty splendid. But if the boss is saying, and I still think we're going to have less traffic there because as opposed to a brew house or something like a Firestone, people are going to come in there and work for the day. So as long as the parking is not detrimental to the people that live right behind that, and they've already been disrupted enough for the last 3 years. The thing about the trees is Brian made a comment a year or two ago about, he's been here since before dirt, and there were no trees on that lot when that lot was first developed. So as long as the developer is taking care of the arbor needs of that property, I'm satisfied with it. But I just want everybody in this room to be happy because I hate the acrimony that we have in these meetings. And it always seems like a us versus them kind of thing. And I just think that if some of these can be addressed hold on a second. And Kevin, you mentioned that with the way to address your employees. They get in a lot of trouble when they disobey the boss in the government, don't they?
We have private chats.
Yeah. Okay, so that's my comments. Jack?
Yeah, I had a question about when the lot split is moved over. Are there any parking spaces that are lost as a result of that?
No, they're not.
So they'll still be able to use the whole thing even though the government now
There's a
leases
recip-
that
there will be a
particular area?
reciprocal agreement.
Yes.
And then I had some questions about the drawings that you supplied. Am I correct in assuming that these are not the final drawings?
These are the drawings that are you will be approving tonight at Planning Commission. These are the drawings that
And I have
will
some
stand as the
questions,
administrative
probably
record.
nits, but
It's are fine.
I think should be addressed.
That's why we're here.
Well, let me open them up. The first one is on the grading plan C2. You referenced the detailed sheet C330 3.0. The detailed sheet is actually 4.0. If you look at 3.0, it's I think it's actually the utilities. Yeah, it's the utility plan. So I think that needs to be changed. Also, I noticed that there was a letter from Public Works about utilities, and this is a question for staff. Does the utility plan reflected in these drawings answer the questions that they ask, or in the?
That would be my understanding, since they've had that occasion to review the plans, and
So,
and
you know,
that this
the
is the
reason
final
I ask
submission.
is that they asked for some pretty specific things, but if they had the drawings, why are they asking for them?
It's yes, I mean, I believe that would be covered under the conditions of approval, that all requirements requested by the Public Works Department be. I believe not, but it's a matter of timing, really, at this point.
I believe the conditions of approval from Public Works require them to submit the utility plan to be approved as an encroachment permit through Public Works.
Thank you.
Another thing that is probably a small thing, but you show moving the flag, but you don't, that I couldn't find any place in the drawings where you're moving it to, where you're moving the flagpole to. It says it's gonna be relocated, but I couldn't see anything on the drawing that says, here's where it's relocated to. I mean, you talked about that it would be in front of the building, which makes sense.
Yeah, it's.
One Highway 246.
It's on sheet A 1.1.
Okay.
Says,
As long as
relocate
it's there,
existing
I
flagpole.
will check it.
Yeah, that's right.
It shows it in page 3.1.
No, I'll believe you. And then the last thing is on the elevations. I had a lot of trouble comparing the elevations to the drawings, like locations of doors and numbers of windows. They don't seem to match up.
They do.
I would hope.
Well,
It's a little deceiving because the building has a lot of ins and outs, like when you approach the main entrance on the lower level, that portion sticks out over a porch, so there's like a covered area you can walk under. So the windows you see on the lower level are back maybe 10 feet or something back from the windows on the front level that are on the second floor offices.
right.
And then likewise, looking at the south elevation that faces the road, the first floor are farther out than the upper floor is set back a little bit because it steps back with the existing roof over that area.
Yeah. No, I counted those, but I was looking in particular at the doors
Mm-hmm.
on the north elevation. I
Okay.
couldn't find those two double doors the lower elevation, on the,
Yeah, we didn't draw that elevation. That is coming out of, if you go to, oh yeah, they're shown as windows on this plan. You go to A2.1, but they're like little French doors that open up off of that large meeting room into that narrow little yard out there. You see those two windows on the north elevation of the large conference room in the front?
yeah?
That's what those would look like. So it's in that little yard between the retaining wall and the building, so that when you're in that room and you look out, there can be some things growing on that wall out there and a little bit of natural light coming into the meeting room.
Okay, so those windows are actually
Mhm.
doors.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not shown that way in the drawing.
And then if you look at A2.2, you can see all the doors and windows for the upper level on that same side.
Yeah, I didn't have any problem with the upper level. Was having problems
Mhm.
with the lower level on all the elevations. I couldn't match them up. So anyway, maybe you could just check that and make sure that what's on the drawing.
They're all in the right place.
Okay, so, oh, good.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank
Okay,
you.
That was all I had.
Got it. Daniel?
So I think the main issue, besides the parking, is kind of the little neighborhood, and I think that's why the residents are here. Is they're concerned about traffic and noise and whatnot. I think that you're going to have more of an impact of traffic is the shopping center and whatnot that's already kind of been there. I do wonder if there's something that can be done on that road to make it safer for those individuals that are using it a lot with bikes and walking and whatnot. And I don't know if the city has any ideas for that, or if the residents have any ideas for that. Something besides just, saying, we're going to put red curb the whole way. Is there any other ideas that we can maybe, make it a little bit safer for those individuals? Because I use the road, my family uses the road all the time. So I do think that's a concern. The other thing I was wondering is, as a Forest Service, do you guys have, are you guys going to have like generators or anything on that side, or is that all admin? Is there ever going to be generator noise or something going on there that's going to have, disturbance for the neighborhood in any sense?
I think
Well, I mean, if you're having big trucks, what I'm saying is you guys have big trucks, you guys are going in the forest, is there any sort of thing that would be, at 3 o'clock in the morning, are you guys going to have generators going off so that the neighbors have to hear?
Essential services building.
Okay.
It doesn't have an emergency generator like a fire department or police department would, because the essential services portion of their operation is done, I believe, out at the airport at the fire station.
Okay, so there's no one staying overnight. It's strictly an admin building is really what it is. Okay, that was just another question I had.
Good question.
So my only comment would be if there is something we could do on that street to make the residents feel safer, any ideas would be great.
I certainly hear those concerns, and that will be a discussion that I will be having with Matt Vanderlinden about the possible options we can have to make that safer, certainly more pedestrian friendly. I'm aware, like everybody else is, of the new housing development coming just down the street from that. So you will have more families, more impact, and I think that's certainly worthy of a staff discussion and some recommendations that we can bring back with to the neighbors and have that conversation. So.
Can the Planning Commission actually recommend to the city that they not only do the red curbs, because that came up when we approved the development in the first place, and that hasn't happened yet?
There has been some red curbing. I don't know if that was just for construction purposes or whether that was permanent.
Driveway, because that was the biggest concern at the time, was that side driveway, the first one, not the second one. I think it was.
I wasn't there at the time that that discussion.
The road curved, and people said it was very dangerous coming out of that driveway. So it was suggested at the time. But the other thing is, since Old Mission is really the only safe access to the shopping center if you're on foot, it would be really good for the city to consider sidewalks on that street, all the way along that street. From, you know, where you cut off of Mission Drive and walk along Old Mission Drive to get to the market or whatever, it would be great to have sidewalks there.
Thank you.
So could we make a recommendation to the city to do that? It's not on the agenda, is it?
Yeah, well, you have free speech rights, and so in the minutes, we can certainly reflect that. It's,
Okay.
It's shocking sometimes.
Put it in the minutes.
Yes.
Yeah. And also, just before we start voting or whatever, making motions, I really think it would be a good idea to add a condition of approval to limit light spill into the neighborhood. Other projects in the valley have had that issue, and I would like to make sure that this neighborhood is protected from that.
Condition C5 in the
You know what, Holly, I don't remember the details. I will look.
That concern was addressed on that.
Even I remember that.
Point.
Okay, that's good.
To direct light downward into the subject lot, prevent spillover onto adjacent lots.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, and then there was,
I think that concern enough, and I appreciate that concern, so.
yeah, it's a big
That's why
concern.
that's there.
And then I noticed when I was reading the conditions of approval, there's a typo on D14, paragraph G.
D as in dog?
Yes. It says no permanent irrigation shall occur within the critical root zone of any native all tree. I think that's supposed to be oak.
You're amazing.
Well, it didn't make sense, okay? Thank you.
And I mean that in a very good way.
Thank you.
If anybody does the most homework.
Should be oak tree.
It is gay.
Yes, but I'm sorry, D14, what?
G.
G, okay.
Yeah, it's like almost the last, third to the last word, second to the last word. It says all instead of oak. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. And then one other thing on page A0.1, where it talks about the accessible parking spaces required, all the numbers are under a column heading called Phase 1. That should be Phase 2, I assume. Okay, thank you.
I have a question. We've just received, we've closed the public comment. We received another request to address. Am I allowed to reopen to have somebody else come up and address real quick?
As the chair, you are allowed to do that, subject to being overruled by a majority of the body.
You guys want to hear one more speaker?
Sure.
Sure. Open it. All right, at this point, for 3 minutes only, if we could have Rod Simmons, please.
Could I defer to speak at the end of the meeting?
This is the end.
Am I that way?
Yeah.
You remember about when I first started 5 or 6 years ago, we started at 7 o'clock.
Well, we started at 6.
We've been
I guess
starting
I'm
at
gonna
6.
start work a little earlier.
Hey, hi, I'm Rod Simmons. I live at 758 Mesa Vista Lane. And I'd like to speak tonight. I've missed the meeting a little bit, but I'd like to speak tonight in support of the Mercantile project. I've been involved in that project since August. I was originally hired as a consultant in August of 2016. I understand there's some controversy over trees and what's been done and what's been taken down and what's not, but I would like to speak to the fact that I was present with several meetings with the council in this room, with the building department. The trees that were taken down, we met with the building department on site. I personally met with those people. The trees that have been taken down were identified per the plan, per what you guys, what the building department has issued. The trees have been taken down are 100% like it's supposed to be. There was a certified arborist involved when I did all the utilities, the trenching and around the trees. If I didn't do it personally, one of my guys did it. There was a certified arborist involved the whole time that was being done that monitored the roots, the cutting of the roots and gone back. Those trees were protected with with barricades. Those trees were also had a drip system around it. And I understand there's a bunch of, I've heard, and again, I apologize for being late, but I've heard that there's some people that was really upset about a bait and switch. I heard Mr. Duncan Lansing, last time I was at this meeting, he talked about the building that was there was not like it's presented. But if you go into the New Frontiers building above the existing salad bar that's there, there's a rendering that's there. And that rendering was there sometime August of 2016. And if you look at that rendering compared to what the building looks like right now, it's pretty close. I mean, it's very, very close. And so as far as projects that I worked on in California, Southern California, Nevada, and Arizona, to have a rendering of a project put up and have that project actually look like that, it's rare to get one that looks so similar. Yes, I worked on that project, and yes, I've accepted funds. I'm a subcontractor to the general there, but I've been there. But I think some of the comments that's made by some of the people have been wrong. I believe in the First Amendment. I'm a very strong. Here in 3 minutes, but I believe in the First Amendment. But I also believe that somewhere along the line, when people keep making comments and saying, "Hey, this is wrong and this is wrong," it's I totally disagree with that. You know, I think somewhere along the line that you, the council, has a right to say, you know what, you're fine to make those statements, but they need to be validated, and I don't feel like that some of them are. So, anyway. Thank you.
And that is what we're working on this evening.
All right.
We close to public comment, and now would anybody choose to make a motion for the amendment?
Okay. I'd like to move that the Planning Commission accept staff recommendation and approve the amendment to the Mercantile Development Plan according to Planning Commission Resolution number 18-06, and accept the notice of exemption, the categorical exemption to CEQA.
Anybody second?
Before anybody seconds, I have a question. Didn't we ask for some additional?
There will be, just to make a suggestion, there will be no, added to E9, there will be no employee parking by the U.S. Forest Service employees on Old Mission Drive.
What about visitors?
We can't control it. We've got lots of visitors. Okay. No. Okay. No.
We're in the middle of the
That's
vote.
good. Yeah.
But you know. So we have a motion to approve PC Resolution 1806 with the amendment.
I just want to say that I'm before we vote, that I wasn't here for the original approval of the entire project. So I just wanted that to be in the minutes, that I don't know if I would have approved it or not at the time. But that seems much more relevant than the amendment to me.
Okay. Comment taken. So we have a motion to approve PC Resolution 1806. Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor say aye.
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 Passes 4-0. Aaron can come back in. We do want to make really positive steps going forward to address the parking, the Old Mission Drive. I mean, everybody wants everybody this town to be happy. We're really excited about a tenant, but we also have some serious issues that were brought very well here tonight. So as soon as I get really, it makes me sad when I have to book something that I think is really good for the city, because we're all just one guy, but we have issues here. So the next step with that is.
I hear you, and that will be brought up internally with staff, and we will seek some recommendations and also discuss them with a larger neighborhood, because I think that this is a neighborhood that's being impacted by development down the road, for instance, and there's an increasing number of families, and we want to have a pedestrian-friendly town. That has always been our strength, and that should be safeguarded.
Any other planning? That's finished. Any other
I have one more question. Will there be one more landscape plan review by the BAR?
Yes, there will be.
Thank you.
Questions, comments, Aaron? Matt? Planning Director, any comments, questions?
No, that's it for now. Thank you.
Meeting